In the world of Mint Retrograde, last Thursday, Tier 5 Festival Flights, without a doubt, those are fantastic weapons. Are we actively hunting Tier 5s for all of those? You're dang right we are. However, if I had to say, what was the one weapon I wanted the most this season? Dare I say, the weapon I need the most? It's this rocket-assisted sidearm right here. Returned memory. Now, let me just say, I unfortunately have the very basic forms of these. At best, Tier 4. Does it get the job done? Sure. However, this is what I really want. Look at this, fellas. Have you seen anything so beautiful? Tier 5 goodness. Barrel perk enhance. Mag enhance. 3 traits per column. An enhanced origin trait. Even enhanced wild card. Fellas, today we're going to be breaking down why you should be looking for this rocket-assisted sidearm. Some of you right now are clutching your Aberrant Action saying, no, not me. I don't need it. But what we're going to dive into in this review is every way in which return memory is going to make Aberrant Action nothing but a memory to you.
I'm better. I am better.
Now, before we begin to break down the perks of this weapon, I need you to understand why this weapon is potentially the best rocket-assisted frame sidearm in the game. Number one, it's part of the new drop pool. And even though, yes, that does mean you cannot do things like focus for it, you can't craft it, it is only a random drop inside of Crucible playlists. It's not even from PvE. And the best you can possibly get is when it's the featured weapon in one of those playlists. Despite those RNG factors, the weapon is worth farming for. With it being part of the tier system, not only is it allowed to be used in every portal activity, most notably when modifiers like Avant-Garde is active. But even beyond that, with it being a tiered weapon, all the way at tier 5, you're actually going to be doing 10% more damage simply because it's a tier 5, which is a huge reason why I'm choosing this weapon over Aberrant Action. On top of that, you have the ability to apply Volatile Mods to it, which, as you've seen in multiple reviews, these Volatile Mods are disgusting. Let me just say this, if there's one thing to take away from any review you have seen from us, Temporal Mods are 1000% worth using. You should always be using them. Now let's break down the perks on return memory. In our third column, we have Beacon Rounds, Impromptu Ammunition, Heal Clip, Impulse Amplifier, Lead from Gold, and the new perk Blast Distributor. In our fourth column, we have Adagio, Desperate Measures, Burning Ambition, Incandescent, One for All, and Redirection. Now, right off the bat, guys, you can see we have some great options between both of those columns, as well as some similar perks we've seen before. Things like Beacon Rounds, Heal Clip, Incandescent. I'm not going to break down each and every single one of these, but we're going to cover the things that really jump out to us. Starting with the new perk, Impromptu Ammunition. This is a new perk in Edge of Fate that says that final blows increase ammo meter progress from all sources for a short time. Now, I know the last thing you care about doing right now is creating more ammo for your weapon, especially if all you seek is destruction. But this is actually a solid perk, especially in the case of return memory, as it's a special weapon. This boosts our meter progress for any kill while procced, and it lasts for 5 seconds. But if you get multiple kills, that timer refreshes up to 7 seconds, while the enhanced version will cap out at 7.5 seconds. So just simply slaying out, you'll be producing even more ammo to take advantage of. Another great perk that we have in the third column, though, is our tried and true heal clip. Reloading shortly after dealing a final blow grants cure to you and nearby allies. Now, let me just say, most of us already liked Aberrant Action, but it's heal clip that has made it a go-to weapon in our energy slots. It's very easy to get health back. It keeps us alive, especially in contest mode, dungeons, and raids. All we have to do is get a kill and then reload. Now, another option we like here, though, that's great for ammo economy is Lead from Gold. The perk says that picking up heavy ammo also grants ammo to this weapon, and this provides us with 25% of our special ammo reserves when picking up a heavy ammo brick, which is very solid. Lead from Gold is very nice, guys. Fantastic if you're running double special, as it helps navigate around those ammo economies. Now, the last perk that we wanted to highlight here in our third column is Blast Distributor. You've probably been seeing these perks pop up on a number of different weapons, but this is another new perk that dropped in Edge of Fate, which says that dealing explosive damage grants a stack of Blast Distributor for 5 seconds, up to a maximum of 5 stacks. Now, if you watched our Festival Flight review, you'll know just how good this perk is. When Blast Distributor is procced, we're granted plus 10 to our grenade stat for each stack, giving us a max of plus 50 stat points when at times 5. And if you have the enhanced version, each stack also provides 1 extra stat point. Now, the interesting thing here, and we brought this up during our Festival review, is that we actually calculated this out with the enhanced version to be plus 65 grenade stats, as this is a 42% grenade damage buff when at 100 grenade, just for dealing explosive damage to an enemy. Now, what this essentially does is it provides us easy extra grenade damage without having to spec into the grenade stats. Now, the big question we had is that if direct hits with the sidearm would proc stacks of Blast Distributor, because if you watched our Festival Flight review, that weapon had the ability to proc all 5 stacks from a single GL shot. However, in our testing, we were not getting stacks via direct hits. Only the AoE blast from the rocket shot would proc the perk, which has to be a bug. Like, there's no way this is supposed to be intentional. I guess the kind of good news is that an enemy that takes AoE damage will add a stack to Blast Distributor, so your blast radius is actually important here if you're rocking this perk. And when going up against groups of ads, you're able to proc stacks fairly easily because of that AoE. I would just prefer if it procced from both sources, both the impact and the explosive AoE damage. I don't want to like run up to an enemy and like shoot the ground in front of them in order to proc this perk. So without a doubt, Blast Distributor is a great perk, but not nearly as easy to proc here as it is on Festival. Now, getting a little ahead of ourselves, where you're able to still make this somewhat work is when you combine Blast Distributor with Incandescent, as this allows you to proc stacks even faster, along with increasing the radius of the proc because the Incandescent explosive radius will grant us those stacks. So TLDR, if you're rocking Blast Distributor on this thing, I highly advise looking for a role that also has Incandescent. It's a great combination. Now this takes us to our 4th column options. There are really 4 here that I think we can narrow in on, with 2 of those being obvious choices. I'm gonna start with 2 that don't have to do with solar, but they provide some great damage buffs. First, we have One for All. Not a new perk, but a staple on weapons that can easily hit multiple enemies. This perk says that hitting 3 separate targets increases damage for a moderate duration. Now, not as easy to proc on this as it is, say, some other weapons like Festival Flight, but it is something you don't really have to think about. You tag 3 enemies with a sidearm, boom, you've got 35% more damage for 10 seconds, with the enhanced version giving us 11 seconds. It's a good perk and fairly easy to proc, but this takes us to our next perk. This one is a heavy hitter, Redirection. The perk says that damaging rank and file combatants increases damage against more powerful ones. So basically, hits against minor combatants grants us 2 stacks of Redirection up to a maximum of 30 stacks. Now, consuming 1 stack with the perk provides us 33% damage against elites, mini bosses, or vehicles. And when you consume 3 stacks, this grants us 100% more damage. Now, the enhanced version is arguably one of the best enhanced versions of a perk. It lowers the amount of stacks consumed to 2, and it bumps our damage up to 50% per stack. What that means is only 2 stacks is required to reach that max cap of 100% more damage. And in this case, that would give us 15 shots of 100% more damage with return to memory. Now, do you have to build this up? Of course. You're killing some minor ads around, you get those stacks rolling, and then you blow your load, preferably on a big champion. Now, moving on to our more solar synergistic perks. We have Incandescent, the go-to Aberrant Action trait, which says that defeating targets spreads Scorch to those nearby, and arguably one of the best ad-clearing perks in the game. It can also be increased with Ember of Ashes fragments, along with being increased even more with the enhanced version of this perk. It's a no-brainer, fellas. Ignitions are phenomenal. Even if you don't get ignitions, the spread of Scorch to nearby combatants allows for them to be easy pickups. You get more kabloomies. It's the reason why so many of us love this perk on a variety of different weapons. Now, the other option we have on the sidearm is another new one, and it actually fixes a big issue that we have with Incandescent in in-game content, and that's the fact that you're only proccing the Scorch on kills, and that Scorch doesn't always proc an ignition. Look no further than our last pick in our 4th column, that being Burning Ambition. This perk says that dealing sustained damage scorches the target. Dealing damage to a scorched target inflicts Scorch. Now, in the case of return memory, how this works is that after shooting an enemy 4 times in rapid succession, the next shot will then apply Scorch to the enemy. And with the enhanced version, that shot count drops down to only 3 shots before proccing Scorch. Now, after proccing Scorch on the target, direct hits on that target will apply more Scorch. And that Scorch amount can be increased by 50% when using Ember of Ashes. Now, there is a cooldown for these shots, which seems to be around 0.5 seconds. But in our testing with Ember of Ashes equipped and the enhanced version of the perk, we could essentially proc the scorching shot after 3 shots. Now, what this essentially allows is for you to have the ability to ignite a target with 7 shots from return memory. Now, you may be thinking, Cross, that just sounds like a lot of wasted ammo. And yes, you do have to expend more, but keep in mind, Burning Ambition can proc ignitions just by dealing damage, where Incandescent very rarely procs those ignitions unless you're actually utilizing utilizing it with some other solar abilities. So without a doubt, Incandescent is the best perk when it comes to clearing ads. All day long, ad level content, when it comes to dealing with red bars, I'll take it. But it's the meteor targets where Burning Ambition starts to shine. And that's where the perk starts to pull ahead. Getting those ignitions off, synergizing with solar. By no means am I saying Incandescent is out and Burning Ambition has completely taken over it. What I would want is really for both of those perks to be present on my tier 5 Godroll. Now, another great thing about Burning Ambition is that these ignitions are procced via our weapon Scorch, which means that the ignition can be scaled with our different weapon buffs. For instance, like it being a featured weapon or increasing your weapon stat above 100. Or even getting stacks of Tenacity, which we're about to talk about in just a moment. Along with this, if you were to proc Scorch from a different source, you can still proc Burning Ambition, leading to quicker Scorch procs, which would trigger even more ignitions. This is a good perk, guys. We've talked about it here recently on the Solstice SMG, and it's popping off here. Now, before we get into volatile mods and different synergies, we gotta talk these origin traits. Early in the video, I brought up the fact that this weapon drops with 3 origin traits. First, we have Roar of Battle. This is a PvP-related trait, and it says that being in combat for a short duration increases handling and stability. Now, this works similar to Frenzy, where exchanging damage at most every 0.5 seconds for at least 2 seconds will grant us Roar of Battle for 6 seconds. And it provides good stats. We're talking like plus 10 stability and plus 10 handling, with the enhanced version extending that duration. The problem is that this is more of a PvP origin trait, and what we're looking for is something for PvE, which takes us to Wildcard. Final blows of this weapon have a chance to create experimental submunitions at the target's location. Now, we've seen this on a number of other weapons before. You kill an enemy, it's gonna drop these celestial bolts right there on the ground. It lasts up for 10.5 seconds. It even spawns in more bolts depending on the enemy type. There is an internal cooldown for how many bolts you can spawn in or how often you can spawn them in. But overall, it's a pretty solid perk. It just throws in some extra damage. And if you got the enhanced version, that internal cooldown in our testing actually decreased to about 5.5 seconds, which I know isn't necessarily a substantial bump since it was previously 6 seconds, but I suppose it's something. But this takes us to our third and final origin trait, Tenacity. When targets are nearby, final blows grant weapon damage, reload speed, and handling until the wielder's death. So essentially, when you get a kill within 15 meters of another enemy, you'll be granted a stack of Tenacity, and that can stack all the way up to times 20. Now, these stacks persist till death, and they grant a 0.5% damage buff per stack, which is an added buff, along with plus 2 handling, and get this, plus 2 reload speed per stack. Now, if you have the tier 5 version, those reload and handling buffs are increased even more, but the damage buff still stays the same. Now, let me just say Tenacity by itself is a phenomenal origin trait, as that damage buff can stack with a lot of other buffs, and it provides great stacking potential for just getting kills. And the handling and reload buffs, most notably the reload buffs, are a fantastic way to bump those stats passively. Now, with the origin traits out of the way, let's talk synergies. Now, since this sidearm is a weapon that drops a season, it's able to take advantage of volatile mods. But we're really just going to talk about 2 for this weapon. First, we have Temporal Armaments. This mod is going to grant us bonus damage against Cabal and Vex targets. When slotted in, our damage here is going to be buffed by 15%, with the enhanced version buffing our damage by 17%. Now, this mod is only available for the tier 4 and tier 5 version of this weapon, but it's a very solid mod and just nets you free extra damage. Now, our second mod is where the real juice comes in. This one is called Temporal Blast. Now, the mod says that dealing damage charges up an explosive blast. So essentially, when you deal damage, you'll see in the bottom left of your screen these charges building up. And when at times 5, that will then change to Temporal Blast ready. Now, once ready, it's the next shot that will explode on impact, dealing additional damage as an explosive payload. Now, in our testing, this can be buffed through our weapon stats and can also be boosted from our origin trait Tenacity. So for instance, at 200 weapon stats and at Tenacity times 20, this increases our damage to 533 for Temporal Blast. Now, you can actually take this further. If you did Redirection plus Tenacity times 20 plus 200 weapon stats, that actually causes this explosion to do a total of 1,066 damage. Fellas, that's pretty substantial. I mean, that is a chunk of damage Granted, I know you're not proccing it all the time, but it's just one of those perks that while you were slaying out and even taking pause against a heavy health targets, this thing absolutely chunks them down. Now, another thing I do want to make note of is if you're using Burning Ambition with Temporal together, when you proc your Scorch and Ignitions, these actually count as hits along with proccing Temporal Blast itself, which just like our Solstice SMG, Burning Ambition and Temporal Blast is just a match made in heaven. This is a combination that I would rock all day long. Now, to keep going with the synergies, we also have artifact mods that are contributing here. We've got Reciprocal Draw, which grants us a 15% damage buff to our sidearms after getting 3 rapid non-sidearm kills. So literally just getting kills with any other weapon type will net us free damage. We also have Cauterized Darkness, which will grant our sidearms a 30% damage buff when dealing damage to a non-boss combatant that is affected by a darkness debuff. We've got Elemental Daze, which will allow Return Memory to deal a solar ignition on a champion stun. And then in our last column, we have Radiant Shrapnel, which we've pretty much utilized with every solar weapon. This one launches scorching solar projectiles when we deal damage while radiant or when defeating a scorched combatant, which should be happening here pretty often. So without a doubt, guys, there is so much here contributing to Return Memory, even before we get into what I deem is the Godroll, which takes us just to that. In my opinion, and again, I'm going to be farming 9 day to get this thing. For me, in that third column, I went Blast Distributor, and I know it doesn't proc on direct hits, but still, I want it anyways, just in case it gets adjusted. Plus, we can still utilize it with Incandescent. I also want Heal Clip and Lead from Gold. I think those are my favorite options. I know Impromptu Ammunition is also pretty good. So if I had to swap out one of these, maybe Lead from Gold for Impromptu Ammunition. In that fourth column though, this is where things get a bit tougher for me. Incandescent, Burning Ambition, One for All, and Redirection. And I guess if I had to swap out one or the other, I guess I would be fine going between Redirection and One for All. Redirection really does chunk. I just wish there was a way I can get Redirection and Incandescent on the same roll, which I know sounds absolutely busted, but I would love that roll. Now, in terms of barrel perks, normally I would actually choose something that increased my velocity. But considering that we also have a situation here where proccing Blast Distributor is somewhat tied to our blast radius, you may want to consider a barrel perk that boosts that blast radius. Outside of that though, things like Quick Launch is really good, ups that velocity, especially the enhanced version at plus 11 velocity and at plus 16 in handling. As far as mag size goes, we did test this out extensively. I was curious to know if dropping the mag size would have an effect on proccing Burning Ambition sooner. Again, just like the Solstice SMG, you actually want your magazine size lower. This will allow you to reach those procs sooner, and so we immediately went and tested High Explosive Ordnance, which is supposed to drop our mag size by -3. Unfortunately though, it does not. It actually drops our mag size by only -2. Regardless, for Burning Ambition, nothing changed. So probably just your typical appendant mag, hell, even tac mag, even flared magwell if you want that as well. Now, would I utilize this weapon inside of PvP? No, I wouldn't, guys. It's just not an archetype meant for PvP. I'm sure someone out there is going to try to make it work, but personally, this is very much a PvE oriented weapon. And I actually do like that it drops from only Crucible. And I know I'm going to have a number of PvE players saying, nah, man, you're never going to catch me playing PvP. But a tier 5 for this one? Hell, I would play Gambit for it. That's our review. Let us know in the comments below what you think. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.